more efficiently and more productively than ever before. Humanity will have evolved slightly.
This is Hatsune Miku, Japan's sensational virtual pop star. She's released over 100,000 songs in multiple languages and performed sold-out concerts around the world. Her image has appeared in games, on TV, in car races, and is even etched on the side of a Japanese space rocket.
I came for Hatsune Miku, Carlos.
She's Lady Gaga's favorite digital pop star and opened shows for her in the US 3 years ago. Tens of thousands of fans attended her exhibition and live shows near Tokyo recently.
理想のアイドルっていうと、どの曲でもミクはすごい綺麗に歌ってくれる。
他没有缺点啊，没有任何让我们感到不开心的一些新闻。
She's everything to everybody. That's probably why she's so popular.
Miku's creator Hiroyuki Ito and his Sapporo-based company have been developing the virtual diva for over 10 years.
初音ミクとは、キャラクターとしてすごく、YouTube とかで検索すると、たくさんの初音ミクが出てくるんですけども、元々の、初音ミクのその原点は歌声を合成する、ソフトウェアなんです。
Both the software and character are named Hatsune Miku, meaning the first sound of the future. Originally based on Yamaha's Vocaloid technology, Miku the software has a sound bank containing voice samples and a huge array of tools. You input the melody and lyrics, then Miku the character sings them. date, Krypton has sold 120,000 software licenses at $200 each to fans around the world who use it to create numerous songs and share them online. Some of the fan-created songs are chosen to be part of Miku's concerts, for which they're paid a royalty fee.
もともと初音ミクっていう存在自体がボトムアップといいますか、中にはアマチュアクリエイターじゃなくて今もうすでにプロになって活躍している方もいらっしゃるんですけども。
The company also has other revenue streams. It makes money from merchandising, licensing deals, and concert ticket sales. According to the real-life musicians who perform with Hatsune Miku, the virtual pop star is interesting and surprising.
今年で3年ぐらい、ちょうど3年ぐらいやってきて、ライブも数十本、数百本だったの。そういうことが演奏によって起こせるためのそういう器みたいな感じになっています。初音ミクらしさって僕はあんまりない。初音ミクって何だってありっていうか。
For Ito, Miku has the potential to change the way we think about music.
そういう新しいテクノロジーによって新しい音楽のあり方っていうものを模索していきたいと思っていました。
And for her fans, it goes even further.
初音ミクって魂がないので、だからみんな魂を作り上げるために存在する。
Now, there are a lot of fitness gadgets out there. In my quest to get fit, I tested 17 of them over the last few months. At least one personal trainer I know was a little bit skeptical.
Yeah, I've been watching these new technologies come to the market for almost as long as I've been a personal trainer. They're just tricks and tropes. They're not much different than the Bowflex machines or, to be honest, the original Jane Fonda workout video.
But some of these gadgets that are just coming to the market do so much more than what they used to do, just tracking your activities. Out of all of them, this chest strap was my favorite. It comes with a robot coach that points to the future, one where you might not need a human trainer at all. And it works like this. You wear the chest strap so that it can read your heart rate, and that connects to Move's free app that talks to you.
Welcome to Move Heart Rate Hit Outdoor Running. Let's get moving and warm up in Zone 2.
Move's computerized coach tells you what to do at that exact moment, whether you're running outside or you're doing body weight exercises indoors.
Swing your arms faster to get your legs moving quicker. Let's crush this round.
And by reading your heart rate, she knows exactly how hard you're working. She keeps you honest.
Way to go, you are in the target zone. Keep pushing, you're almost at the end of the round. Don't give up.
I've been running for 7 years now, and my biggest problem is that I never push myself hard enough. I end up going on the same slow, comfortable 30-minute jog, but the Move HR Burn blasted me out of that rut. By the end of these half-hour exercises, I was drenched in sweat in a way that I never am when I work out alone. Training with a real person is great, whether that's your group instructor or your coach or your personal trainer. But humans, they're expensive. For the rest of us, this $60 gadget is all you need.
does it take to change the world? A big army? A cure to a pandemic? A revolution? All of these take either a lot of people, thousands of hours, or massive amounts of space. But for Julian Assange, all he needs is one room, an internet connection, and the world will listen. Assange is located here, and more specifically, right here. And from that location, he's posted government secrets, classified documents, and leaked emails from some of the world's most powerful people. And in doing so, has been labeled a hero, a villain, a nihilist, and everything in between. This is how an Australian programmer sequestered in the Ecuadorian embassy in London became one of the most influential and notorious people in the world. Born in 1971 in Townsville, Australia, Assange has always been on the move. Living in over 30 homes by the time he was in his mid-teens, Assange, along with his mother and half-brother, finally settled down in Melbourne. His introduction to hacking started at 16 when he was given a Commodore 64, which he attached to a modem. He attended the University of Melbourne, where he studied programming, physics, and mathematics. He never graduated, but that doesn't mean he didn't get an education. By 1991, Assange hacked into the Pentagon, U.S. Navy, and other branches of the U.S. government. In 1996, he was caught by the Australian Federal Police and charged with over 30 counts of hacking and computer-related crimes. He didn't get any jail time, but he was fined $2,100.
I think the first taste of what would come later was the hacking that he did as a young programmer, and that really sort of foreshadowed a healthy skepticism of the use and abuse of technology by governments.
That's Vernon Silver.
I'm a reporter for Bloomberg's investigations team.
Assange's youth as a hacker laid the foundation for him to start WikiLeaks in 2006. But what is WikiLeaks? It's a website that posts unfiltered, usually classified documents. What separates it from every other media outlet is that they have no editorial hierarchy. With a publication like the New York Times, information comes in, they take that information, package it, then disseminate it for the public to see. WikiLeaks, however, cuts out the middleman.
WikiLeaks gathers information, most of it given to them anonymously. So what they're doing is really very simple. They get the information in one end from who gives it to them and out the other with sometimes minimal interference. Julian Assange is the leader of that, the mastermind, the creator, and really, because he thinks of it as a journalistic enterprise, the editor-in-chief.
But every story starts with a source, and Assange has some unconventional sources.
Julian Assange does not hack as far as we know. He is the recipient of people who are either insiders who give him secret documents or hack emails from a foreign power.
That's Eli Lake.
I am a columnist for Bloomberg.
And there was no source bigger for Assange than Chelsea Manning. He used to be known as U.S. soldier Bradley Manning. In 2010, Manning provided Assange and WikiLeaks with hundreds of thousands of leaked government documents. WikiLeaks quietly began releasing the documents in February of 2010, then made big headlines in April by posting what is now known as the collateral murder video.
Come on, fire!
It was a vivid, graphic video. It changed the debate on the Iraq War, and importantly, it put WikiLeaks on the map when they put it online, and they couldn't be ignored at that point.
And those leaks were just the beginning. They went on to post more than 90,000 leaked documents known as the Afghan war logs, 390,000 documents known as the Iraq war logs, and 250,000 private messages between diplomats called cables in what is now known as Cablegate. These leaks were met with very real ethical questions.
The problem with publishing those cables was that a number of confidential sources for U.S. diplomats who faced real danger when their names were exposed.
Then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton drove the point home that
every country, including the United States, must be able to have candid conversations about the people and nations with whom they deal.
Shortly after Cablegate, the Swedish government issued an arrest warrant for Assange on allegations of rape and molestation. He claimed the allegations were fabricated to get him extradited to the United States, a claim the U.S. government denied. Either way, Assange's next move was
to seek refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy, which really was the beginning of the new chapter in his life and what we're dealing with now, which is him being stuck in London.
What was supposed to be an office in an embassy is now Assange's self-imposed prison to this very day. But that doesn't mean he's slowed down. Since being trapped in the embassy, WikiLeaks has released files about Guantanamo Bay prisoners, Syrian political figures, and the draft to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And then came the 2016 U.S. election.
Thousands of leaked emails showed Democratic Party officials possibly plotting against Bernie Sanders in his race against Hillary Clinton.
Over the course of 68 days, WikiLeaks released 20,000 confidential Democratic National Committee emails. In terms of the presidential race, if you look right here, when Assange released the first batch of emails, Trump actually takes his first lead against Clinton.
I think we've had enough of the Clintons, in all fairness.
Once WikiLeaks started exposing secrets of the Democratic Party, Julian Assange became a hero to many on the right. Public opinion kind of flip-flopped.
WikiLeaks.
From the emails, we now know Hillary Clinton's campaign manager makes risotto, and also how the DNC squashed Bernie Sanders' campaign. One thing we don't know is who gave Assange the stolen emails in the first place.
Many leading Democrats say they suspect it was the Russians. They released an analysis from a private cybersecurity firm that had said it was the Russians.
But Assange claims
our source is not the Russian government, and it is not a state party.
So this is where we stand today. The public still doesn't know who provided the emails to WikiLeaks. Meanwhile, Assange is still running WikiLeaks and still releasing documents. In March 2017, he started publishing documents from the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence called Vault 7.
The CIA, the agency charged with finding and keeping our top secrets, can't keep its own secrets.
As long as Assange has a connection to the world, no government secret will be too far from exposure.
Julian Assange is still in the embassy. Maybe he'll leave, maybe he won't. Kind of regardless, his work has been done. He's changed the way people think about their governments, about their own secrets, about their own hackability, and really the world has changed because of him.
Expose everything you won't admit. And action. This entire video is based on a true story. When I do like motivational speeches or even tell myself like, love yourself and you should love yourself.
This is Lily Singh,
But to fans all over the world, she's the YouTube star Superwoman.
What up, everyone? It's your girl, Superwoman. I know we can change the world for the better, one positive day at a time.
My parents now know what I do. They didn't know what I did for a long time in the beginning of my career. I was just making videos in my room. They had no idea.
Mom, Dad, have you seen my keys? I can't find them anywhere. Because you're always on phone.
Until someone called them, like a family member from another part of Canada, was like, Canada, is your daughter making videos? And the mom was like, I don't know, Lily, are you making videos?
Just making videos grew into an entire career. Today, Lily's YouTube channel has some 12 million subscribers, over 2 billion views, and guest stars like Michelle Obama, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and Seth Rogen.
I think a lot of young girls are raised to believe that you're going to go to school and then graduate and then get married and then get a job and then have kids.
And Lily was on that path, all the way through a psychology degree at York University in Toronto. But when she started thinking about a career,
I started to immensely panic and think something was wrong with me because I tried to figure out my life and it wasn't working in that straight line.
It was 2010, and YouTube was only 5 years old.
I thought nothing of YouTube. I was probably the last person in my circle of friends to discover YouTube. And I remember when I did, I thought, this is so strange. There's people making videos in their rooms, and other people are watching them.
So she figured, why not give it a shot?
I one day posted a video because I was sad, my life, and I wanted to be creative and happy.
She didn't know how to edit video or write scripts, so she winged it.
It was so bad and so cringe, and my expectation was literally nothing. I was like, I'm gonna put this video up, a couple of my friends are gonna watch it, probably make fun of me, and that's gonna be the end of this. The second and third video came from, wait, 70 people watched my first one, can I get 80 to watch the next one?
She kept creating, she kept posting, and the viewers kept coming. Lily had found an audience.
A lot of the comments were, oh my God, there's a brown girl on YouTube.
More specifically, Indian. Lily's parents immigrated to Canada from India, and Lily was born and raised in Scarborough, near Toronto.
My home life was awesome. My parents, even though I portrayed them to be quite strict in my videos.
Oi, Lily, where the rest of your skirt, huh? I teach you like this, to walk around like this, showing everything to everyone?
They actually aren't like that at all. They're pretty modern and pretty cool.
Your dress is short. Don't know what for.
And we're pretty lenient with me. I mean, I got away with a lot of things. I was a brat. I was a brat.
She had a different idea of what she wanted out of life than other kids. In a grade school graduation slideshow, her classmates said they wanted to be lawyers and doctors.
And then I came up and I was like, rapper.
Making out with your friends, man. But then you say that you hate hoes.
I could just feel my parents being like, why?
Because that's just not something women really did in the Singh family.
I know there was a ton of people that weren't happy about my birth being a female, so I think, and that's a real-ish, but it's a real thing. The best thing I could have done to prove to so many people that didn't want my mom to have a daughter was to become Superwoman.
What up, everyone? It's your girl, Superwoman.
It was the name of Lily's favorite hip-hop song by Lil Mo featuring Fabulous.
I love the song so much because it was one of the only songs at the time that was an empowering female song, where Lil Mo's going on about, like, I will save guys with my superpowers, and I will save girls with my superpowers, and I am the Superwoman. I thought, this name that I've had for so long that empowered me when I was younger, I'm gonna make this my screen name.
Maybe there should be a new series.
Superwoman didn't just burst onto the scene overnight with a viral video. It was a steady climb fueled by hard work.
The moment that I thought this is going somewhere and this could be a career was the first time I performed internationally. It was in India. And it was the first time where I was truly across the world and people knew my videos.
Singh has transformed herself from a bratty kid to an internet personality to a media mogul. She starred in a feature film, A Trip to Unicorn Island, in 2016. And her book, How to Be a Boss, hit the New York Times bestseller list in 2017 while she was on a 30-city international tour. Lily started out with the goal of getting millions of subscribers and financial security.
Hurry the hell up!
But after surpassing those goals, success has new meaning.
I've really come to terms with the fact that my definition of success is what's the best legacy I can leave behind. And it's not the number of views and the number of subscribers. It is the number of people that can say, this girl changed my life or changed something in my life positively.
CTE is often in the brains of deceased athletes, military veterans, and others with a history of repetitive brain trauma. Hundreds have donated their brains to the VA Boston University Concussion Legacy Foundation Brain Bank.
This is a former NFL player who died in his early 70s, and this is a veteran who also died in his early 70s.
Dr. Ann McKee dissects these brains.
The hippocampus and the mammillary bodies are very important for memory. I can see that they're slightly affected.
McKee recently dissected the brain of former New England Patriots player Aaron Hernandez, who was convicted of murder, later committed suicide.
You'll see right away that the brain is showing signs of shrinkage. You can see the crevices in the brain that you can't see in the normal.
McKee says Hernandez's severe case of CTE impacted his decision-making, depression, and ability to control rage and aggression. Right now, she thinks we're underestimating how many people have CTE.
We were able to distinguish between CTE and controls and CTE and Alzheimer's disease. The next question is, can we do this in the blood, and can we do this in living people? And we aren't there yet with those answers.
But the need for a diagnosis in the living is motivating companies such as Quanterix in Lexington, Massachusetts, to work faster on technology that could diagnose concussions and CTE in as few as 30 minutes. Kevin Rusovsky, CEO.
High-powered scope, and so by doing that, we can see little biomarkers that you couldn't see before in the blood.
Quanterix received a grant from the NFL and just went public. Since then, its stock is up more than 40%. The company sells a machine called Simoa for $175,000 to other biotechs, hospitals, and researchers.
And for the first time in history, we're able to see brain health in blood, and that's a major breakthrough, and that's leading to less invasive testing, and we've already been able to see evidence of concussions, and there's the beginning evidence of being able to see the accumulated effect of concussions.
Quanterix is also trying to detect Alzheimer's disease, multiple sclerosis, and ALS. Rusovsky says he thinks diagnosing concussions will be easier than diagnosing CTE.
Diagnosing CT in the living probably is a couple years away. We're real excited to see the progress, but reducing some of that work into actual tests in the laboratory takes time. There's regulatory approvals. There's a lot of red tape that you have to go through.
Also in this race to diagnose CTE in the blood are Athlon Medical and Exosome Sciences. And New York's Mount Sinai Hospital is scanning for the disease in the living. But it's just one step in a series of questions for those with serious head trauma. There's still no cure for CTE.
Even if we had a great idea for a treatment, there's no way to test whether it's effective or not. So that's the enormous advance that we'll get if we can develop a biomarker for this disease.
In Boston, Ann Mostu, Bloomberg News.
Wine is a $300 billion global industry where one person's opinion can make fortunes or break them. That's because of this man, Robert Parker, and his newsletter, The Wine Advocate. For 3 decades, he dominated as the world's most influential wine critic. Now Parker's protege is building an empire of his own. Antonio Galloni runs Venice.
Antonio, tell me, what are you trying to build at Venice?
Well, at Venice, we started with the idea in 2013 of building a world-class platform. We have a database of about 250,000 professionally written reviews. On Delectable, we have 7 million user reviews. Through Delectable, we also have a partnership with Whole Foods and several other partnerships that we can't announce just yet. And when you put that all together, what we have is something that no other company in our space can even come close to.
Do you think of yourself as the next Parker?
Not at all.
Why?
Because Steve Jobs said you can't live your life trying to be somebody else. So he's one of my biggest influences, and I've never wanted to be a replica of somebody else because a replica is never as good as the original. Bob is a genius, fantastic, one of a kind. We're going to be something completely different, and I have no desire to be some version of somebody else.
Different in what way?
Every decision that I've made at this company is completely anathemic to what Bob did with his company. I want our writers to be partners. All of my senior people are locked into the company. They all have equity or they have a path to equity based on business results. That's something that we never had at Parker. Our benefits are world-class, and everything that we've done at Venice is completely different from that model. When Steve Tanzer, who is the most experienced active wine critic in America, wants to work with us, that says something. When Alessandro Masnaghetti, who's the best cartographer of vineyards, wants to work with us, that says something. When Neil Martin, who's a superstar wine critic with enormous experience in Bordeaux and Burgundy and the former lead critic at The Advocate, wants to come and be part of our team, that says something.
You make it sound like The Wine Advocate was a disaster as a company and a miserable experience as an employee.
No, it was great because I got to work with Bob Parker when he was at his prime. You know, and Bob was like a second father to me, and we talked on the phone all the time, and he gave me great advice.
Can anyone's palate dominate the wine criticism business the way Parker's did? And should anyone's palate dominate it the way his did?
I just think the world is very different today. You know, it's just a totally different world. It's probably not healthy to have a single person dominating the world.
It's not even wine criticism, it's the wine industry.
Yeah, that's probably not the healthiest thing in the world. But I think that there's just such an opportunity right now with social media and technology to reach such a massive number of people that I think it's possible that 1 or 2 people will actually have more influence than Bob Parker did, because they will, again, this goes back to your first question, not trying to be a version of somebody else. You see this in sports all the time. It's like, oh, well, nobody will ever beat this record. And then somebody comes along, you know, it's like tennis, Pete Sampras. Nobody's ever going to win as many Grand Slams. Now you have 2 guys who are ahead of that and 1 knocking on the door. And so I think a lot like that.
You're a former investment banker. How does that inform and influence what you're doing and what you've done?
My generation has had to deal with a lot more challenges. That's why I think we're actually much better poised for the future. My first job in finance, the first thing that happened was long-term capital, 1998. Then the tech bubble melted down. Then there was a mutual fund trading scandal. You know, that was all like within about 5 or 6 years. And these are the things that I had to deal with as a young executive. My peers who were 20 years older didn't know how to manage in crisis. They'd only seen Black Monday. They'd just been in a big bull market. It's very different. So I'm very lucky. People of my generation or a little bit younger have actually had to deal with a lot more crises. I think that's actually good for learning how to cope with challenges in business.
From the outside, it kind of looks like you're trying to demolish the house that Parker built, right? You left the Wine Advocate.
Yeah.
You merged with one of his chief rivals.
Yeah.
And you just hired his successor, Neil Martin.
Mm-hmm.
So are you?
I think what that says is that all the best people want to work at our company. And that's really what we strive to create starting in 2013. We wanted to create a world-class company that would attract the best-in-class talent, and not just on the content side, on the technology side, on the digital side, our office, and at every level, what we're trying to, we only hire superstars, and we're looking for those superstars.
In the world of professional wrestling, there's something called a swerve.
Hulk Hogan has betrayed WCW.
Some examples. These tag team partners are called baby faces, or the good guys. Then one of them swerves when he super kicks his tag team partner in the head, quickly assuming the role of the bad guy, or what the wrestling world calls the heel.
Are you kidding? What a despicable act that was!
Or a match is almost lost when, what's that? The superstar wrestler appears out of nowhere sprinting down the aisle to save the match.
That's the Warriors music! It's the ultimate warrior!
That's a swerve. So it should go as no surprise that World Wrestling Entertainment, known as the WWE, the most popular brand of sports entertainment in the world, is prepared for any swerves that come their way. So here's the story of how the WWE learned to see the swerve coming. So I spoke to Bloomberg reporters Felix Gillette.
I'm a writer for Bloomberg News for the global business team.
And Kim Basine.
And I'm the U.S. luxury reporter at Bloomberg.
To find out exactly how the WWE is positioning itself for an all-out global invasion, which starts with a massive change to their lucrative pay-per-view model.
WWE basically pioneered the pay-per-view model on cable. I remember as a kid, when the pay-per-view events came up, all of our friends would scramble around and try and get one of the parents to pay for it.
But in 2014, they took a huge risk.
They saw a little bit sooner than some of the other entertainment brands that where this whole thing was moving was away from cable and satellite television and towards on-demand streaming video apps. They made this risky decision, in essence, cannibalizing that pay-per-view model, which they had essentially built.
And after some early turbulence, it's working. Roughly 1.5 million people are paying $9.99 a month for the WWE app, making it the fifth most popular streaming OTT service. This adapt-or-die approach is in the WWE's DNA. Over the past 30 years, the company always seems to think 2 steps ahead. In the early 90s,
WWE was at its most threatened when Ted Turner took them on with WCW,
which stands for World Championship Wrestling. And back then, the WCW was winning the ratings war. So in order to compete with them,
WWE had changed its product from a family-friendly kind of cartoonish style to this really raw. That's why they called their show Raw. It was this raw style of wrestling.
With violent, outrageous, reality-inspired plot lines and aggressive personas.
From a 16-foot ladder!
And they won that fight against Ted Turner. And they bought WCW.
The early 2000s ushered in an era of testosterone-driven programming aimed at the red-blooded American male.
Bra and panties matches, and people smash each other over their head with like barbed wire bats and things like that.
Until 2015, when WWE fans started a hashtag Give Divas a Chance. Since then, WWE has hired 40 more female wrestlers, and that growing cast of female characters was part of a much larger plan.
They started to try to appeal to a broader set of people.
Let's attract more female fans. And after we've attracted more female fans, let's attract more international fans. They're broadening their base, and they're doing that in large part to make it more advertising friendly.
And not just friendly to advertisers.
They're trying to build up their fan base in China. They're trying to build up their fan base in Europe. They, already have a pretty good fan base in India.
India is a place where they already have an established wrestling culture.
Because of the gigantic Indian wrestler, the Great Khali. But there's still a lot of work to do. While the WWE set a revenue record in 2017, only 30% of it is coming from an overseas audience. And there's one person whose responsibility is to grow that number.
The buck eventually stops at Vince McMahon, no matter what's happening within WWE.
Yeah, he's a very controlling guy, and it's a very, very, very tightly scripted company.
And that goes all the way down the board to big stars' entrance music. And their outfits and things like that.
So with a CEO like McMahon always planning 2 moves ahead and an aggressive push into multiple international markets, a big issue is money.
It's hard to do all those things simultaneously without committing a huge amount of capital to it.
And that's where the WWE becomes an attractive company for buyers.
Potentially, one thing that could happen with WWE is they could benefit by being acquired by a bigger technology or telecom company, an Amazon or Facebook or a 21st Century Fox.
So with a market cap of $2.8 billion, the advantage of owning 100% of their own content, and a rapid consolidation spreading throughout the entertainment industry, it looks like the WWE is well positioned, even if there are swerves.
Our world is changing. Every day, it changes a little faster. Some changes are too small to see. Others, too big to handle. Sometimes, change feels slow. So slow, we don't even notice. Other times, it happens all at once, and we can't keep up. For our climate, change means many things. And between too small to see and too big to handle, there is a whole world of difference. The clock is ticking. This is Bloomberg Green.
Saving the seas. This week, the deep-sea diver who stopped writing the ocean's obituary to find a solution. Enric Sala tells us why the next 10 years matter most. And globalization needs to get greener. Shipping accounts for nearly an eighth of all transport emissions. How can the industry clean up its act? Plus, protecting coastlines comes at a huge environmental cost. But one Israeli startup found a way to keep the sea out and the animals in. From London, I'm Anne-Marie Hordern, and this is Bloomberg Green. After more than a decade of studying the ocean as an academic, Enric Sala realized he was writing the ocean's obituary. He quit his job and became a full-time conservationist. As an in-house explorer for National Geographic, he's clocked more than 5,000 open water dives. He's also founded Pristine Seas, a project that combines exploration, research, and media to lobby countries to protect their oceans. To date, it has helped create marine reserves equivalent to half the size of Canada. I spoke to him about his mission and why it's so urgent.
The state of the world's oceans is really bad. We have lost 90% of the large fish in the ocean. Sharks, groupers, cod, tuna. More than half of the fish stocks are overfished, which means that we are taking them out of the water faster than they can reproduce. More than half of the ocean is affected by industrial fishing, and global warming is killing coral reefs all around the world. The ocean is in a trajectory of decline.
Can you just visualize for our viewers who never get to see the kind of things you are able to see, what an ocean and healthy ecosystem looks like versus one that's next to a bustling economic and industrialized area?
Coral reefs in the United States, in the Florida Keys, are down to only 2% of what they used to be. Before, 80 to 90% of the bottom on a coral reef in the Caribbean was covered by live coral. Now, Florida Keys have only 2%. The average in the Caribbean is about 5% of the bottom covered by live coral. The rest is covered by slime and seaweed. And most of the fish you can see are this big. And it is very, very rare that if you jump into any place in the Caribbean at random, you see a shark. It's very, very rare. Now, let's go to Millennium Atoll, for example. An atoll that is uninhabited and fished south of the equator in the Central Pacific, belongs to the Republic of Kiribati. 2009, we conducted the first underwater expedition to this island, and I still remember the first time. Jumped over the side of the boat, and as soon as the bubbles cleared, I was surrounded by 15 gray reef sharks. After a couple minutes, the sharks decided that we were boring, and they went back to do their thing. And you look down, 90% of the seafloor is covered by thriving coral, and it's full of fish, and a sea turtle comes by. Now, this abundance that we rarely see anywhere except in well-managed marine reserves. This is what the ocean used to be like, and this is what we have learned from going to these pristine places.
And you write in your book that you're writing the obituary of ocean life. What's the cure?
The cure is doing less harm. Basically, there are three things that we are doing to the ocean. One is we are taking fish out of the water faster than they can reproduce. Two, we are turning the ocean warmer and more acidic because of man-made climate change. And three, we are throwing in everything that we don't want, our waste and our plastic. We need basically to reverse these trends.
Does this mean that a lot of this falls to governments and their policies?
That's a big part of it, because it is governments that regulate fishing and mineral extraction and oil extraction. It is governments that have the legal authority to create large marine reserves in the ocean, but also about something that is apart from us. We are not apart from nature. We are a part of nature. So these 10 years are probably the most critical in the history of humanity.
The most accurate measurements of changing oceans will come from space. While Enric Sala explores what lies beneath, a new satellite is giving us data from above.
We'll learn more about our oceans and climate change, but from space. A new satellite's been launched from California. Its mission, track the accelerating rise of sea levels.
Well, the main instruments on board include a dual-frequency radar altimeter. And this is the primary instrument of the mission, and that's the one that's measuring sea surface height, significant wave height, and wind speed over the ocean. And from those measurements, we can actually have the superb measurements that we expect of sea level rise.
Data gathered from Sentinel-6 will be used alongside information from other satellites to build as complete a picture of the oceans as possible.
With a long record, we can precisely measure the acceleration. We eventually can detect new regime, tipping points. For example, if there is a runaway in the melting of Greenland or Antarctica, sea level will record this runaway change because it is an integrator of all changes that are occurring in the climate system. So we will be able to see some change, big change in the global climate.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration expects that sea level rise will increasingly threaten U.S. coastlines. One example, the southern tip of Manhattan is expected to flood 20 to 40 times a year by 2030.
11 of the 15 largest megacities are located at the coast, and this number will double. The number of people living in coastal area will double by 2060. So, knowing how much sea level is rising at the coast and how much it will rise in the future in coastal areas is as obvious. It's obviously a major goal for human beings.
Coming up, from sails to steam to oil, the shipping industry is no stranger to change. But how will it navigate the next transition? This is Bloomberg Green. From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Anne-Marie Hordern. This is Bloomberg Green. Now, for your roundup of this week's latest climate news, Jennifer Zabazaja has your Green in Brief.
Here's the climate news you need to know. Deforestation of the world's largest rainforest has hit a 12-year high. More than 4,000 square miles of the Amazon rainforest was destroyed in 2020. That's a 9.5% increase from a year earlier. Government data shows that destruction has soared since President Jair Bolsonaro took office and weakened environmental enforcement. The Amazon is home to millions of species and plants and is critical in the fight against climate change. Bitcoin is hitting all-time highs, but at what cost to the environment? The cryptocurrency is energy intensive, and there are concerns if it becomes mainstream. According to MIT, back in 2018, Bitcoin's carbon footprint was almost as big as Portugal's. Want to get better at tackling climate change? We'll hire more women. That's according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance. Firms with 30% or more women in top jobs tend to perform better when it comes to the environment and are more likely to set clear climate goals. Shopping online is more popular than ever now, but the price of convenience is measured in CO2, and more deliveries means more fuel burned and more packaging wasted. So what can companies do? Well, many are becoming more efficient and sourcing more clean energy for their data centers and warehouses. And England's farmers will be paid to go green after Brexit. As European subsidies are phased out, they'll get new money to encourage them to produce healthy, sustainable food. Poor farming practices are one of the leading drivers of water pollution and the loss of biodiversity. I'm Jennifer Zabazaja in New York. Anne-Marie, back to you.
The shipping industry is more than just the grease on the wheels of globalization. It's its chief enabler. 11 billion tons of goods are transported by ship each year, the biggest contributors being 2 billion tons of oil, 1 billion tons of iron ore, and 350 million tons of grain. According to the International Chamber of Shipping, 80% of Europe's imports and exports happen over the seas. And for such a vast industry, it also contributes its fair share of emissions. Shipping makes up 12% of global transport energy consumption. So how does it clean up its act? Earlier, I caught up with Bloomberg Green reporter Laura Milan about just how big of a challenge this is going to be for the industry.
One of the main issues is size. So about 90% of the world's cargo is moved by ships. So obviously changing such a huge industry is not going to be fast and it's not going to be easy. The second issue has to do with technology. So ships obviously travel for many days at sea. It's not as easy for them to refuel as it would be for a car, for example, going on a road. And the sector still hasn't found a technology that's economically viable and that's zero emissions, an equivalent to the electric batteries for cars, for example.
But actions are being put in place to make the industry a bit more environmentally friendly. Walk us through those steps that they're taking.
That's it. So there's a first step that would involve using low emission fuels or biofuels that would significantly reduce the existing emissions. And then at a regulatory level, when it comes to the policy and the governments, there are steps being made as well. I would say that the most significant ones come from the European Union, which started to track emissions a few years ago and is now looking to include shipping emissions in the emissions trading system. So that would significantly reduce and help calculate the emissions from the shipping industry. Now, China is taking similar steps. So at the moment, regions need to report shipping emissions to the central government. And finally, we have the International Maritime Organization with a pledge to reduce shipping emissions by 50% in 2050. Now, we must say that that pledge has been considered insufficient by environmental groups, but at least some steps are being taken.
So to get to 2050, the industry obviously is going to need to start tapping some new technologies. What new technologies are you seeing being introduced into the shipping industry?
So we have seen pilot technologies being developed for years now, but what's interesting about this current moment is that we're seeing big players invest in these technologies that are not yet economically viable, but that one day might be. So for example, we are seeing earlier this year, the world's largest agricultural commodities trader, Cargill, saying they will invest in attaching sails to their ships so they can make any technology that they run their ships on more efficient. Similarly, we have seen a spin-off of Airbus, the aeronautics company, developing a similar application with kites. We have been following also developments in hydrogen. So at the moment, hydrogen fuel seems like a good option, a possible option when it has been developed and when it becomes economically viable. And we have Vestas, for example, the world's largest turbine maker, developing some ships that will be able to run on hydrogen in the near future.
Coming up, rising sea levels means humans need to get creative when it comes to coastal defenses. But how do we protect both ourselves and the environment? One Israeli startup may have the answer. That's coming up next. This is Bloomberg Green. In London, I'm Anne-Marie Hordern. This is Bloomberg Green. After water, what's the resource that humans use the most? It's concrete, 3 tons a year for every person on the planet. And engineers estimate it's used twice as much as all other building materials combined. And it comes with a huge environmental cost. Concrete, not just in cities, it's a common feature on our coastlines too. And that's taking a toll on biodiversity. But one Israeli startup has found a way of making sea defenses stronger and encouraging life to thrive.
If you take a look at concrete structures like breakwaters or seawalls, the water around them is often clear. That's not actually a good thing, because it means there's no life. Marine species are actually most abundant in coastal areas, but it's also where us humans prefer to live too. So when we build here, we drive away marine life.
The concrete in the marine world has a lot of additives, a lot of chemicals, and some of those materials are actually leaching out, and they're actually prohibiting marine life to thrive. If we keep developing without any regards to natural communities, there is a tilting point from which beyond we cannot really go back.
In the coastal city of Tel Aviv, an Israeli startup wants to revolutionize our urban coastlines. Their sea defenses are transforming lifeless man-made structures into teeming ecosystems. They do this by replacing standard concrete with their own special cement formulas.
As opposed to regular cement-based concrete, e-concrete includes certain elements that enhance the growth of marine flora and fauna of plants and animals. Our admix, which is kind of our secret sauce, is basically kind of sealing the concrete, making it less aggressive for the marine environment. That once we add it, we enable life to flourish.
In the lab, the team run tests to identify what mixes will work best for marine life.
So we take really ice cube sized concrete slabs of different compositions, and we put larvae, 20, 30, 50. We need to have a lot of replicates. We're geeky scientists, so we have to have a lot of replication and controls. And then within a few days or just a few weeks, we can get an answer on their preference. So obviously if they die, they have a very low tolerance to that specific concrete mix design. And if they thrive or they flourish, we can quantify that very quickly.
E-concrete says it typically sees double the biodiversity of regular grey concrete. From fish and sea caterpillars on their armour blocks to crabs on these tidal pools that sit on the shoreline.
This unit holds water during the low tide, so it's always moist, and therefore it has a very comfortable habitat for crabs and sea anemones and sea stars, etc. These pools have been here for less than 3 months, and this is already what you can see. It's covered with life. See the rock around it, which has been here for probably 10, 20, maybe even more years, only has a thin layer of green algae, and that's it.
As well as the composition of the cement mix, E-concrete designs its products specifically to the marine environment it will be deployed, to create niches for endangered species, or to develop nurseries like these oyster beds. The final part of the equation is creating complex surface textures to mimic natural rock or coral, an environment that helps anchor young organisms.
When concrete elements are being cast, the typical goal is to have a very slick surface, very, very smooth. The idea is to get the water to flow right across it. When we're designing e-concrete with a rough surface, we want to do the complete opposite. We want to slow the water when they are crossing the structure so that the larvae can actually adhere and attach to the surface.
E-concrete has to offer its clients more than just ecological credentials. Over time, they've discovered that creating hospitable habitats for marine life adds another advantage, one that is surely hard to ignore.
We've seen evidence to the fact that the growth of the organisms on the concrete create kind of a layer of defense. Just the addition of weight, we can actually gain stability and strength over time.
This is let's say the unit when we put it in the water. And this is after a year in the water. And what you can see here is all the oysters are completely covering it. We designed the units so they can withstand the forces and perform in terms of structural performance, but they can also be a backbone for ecological enhancement.
The company tests its miniature designs in tanks full of real seawater, rocks, plants, and animal life from around the world.
What we're looking for is the accumulation of calcium carbonate on the surface of the concrete of different mixes and different designs. This is the process we call it biogenic buildup. So with time, we get a buildup of calcium carbonate that is sourced from marine organisms on the surface of the concrete. And we actually encapsulate the concrete with a natural rock. So when the organism die, in case of a coral, it will die, and then another coral will sit on it, and that's how a reef is growing.
The hope that our man-made structures could become stronger over time also means better economics. The
The units require less maintenance and could therefore stay in the water for longer. E-concrete, though, is just a few years old, so it needs more time to really quantify the longevity of its products. But the company are certain their products are better for the environment, and not just in terms of improving biodiversity.
We're kind of trying to offset some of that immense carbon footprint of the concrete industry.
Construction is responsible for about 11% of global carbon emissions. By adding a biological crust to their products, e-concrete prevents some CO2 from being released into the atmosphere.
For every kilogram of calcium carbonate being created by those marine organisms, we're offsetting 120 grams of CO2. So think about building a port infrastructure or a city waterfront that is an active carbon sink. I think that's a great advantage of the technology.
That does it for this week, but let's keep the conversation going on Twitter. Follow us at Climate. I'm Anne-Marie Hordern, and this is Bloomberg Green.
This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
So live from my home in New Jersey, also from our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, streaming on YouTube. It is Groundhog Day, Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021, and get ready for 6 more weeks of winter. So it goes.
Is it going to be like this every day, Carol? Where,
you mean like
16
snow?
inches of snow in New York City?
I have to say, I've always loved snow, even as a kid. I couldn't wait to get home from school and like get your sled out and just go on into it.
Well, it's a little different, I feel like,
As an adult?
As an adult, but I've seen a lot of great pictures of kids having fun out there.
Yeah, really cool. And I got to say, we're seeing different trends when it comes to the likes of GameStop and some others. We're going to get into that. And remember when Bitcoin was the speculative trade? We've got a great guest coming up on that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. We're also talking a lot about, of course, more GameStop. And I know Charlie Pellet has the latest on the big movements there.
GameStop shares right now, they're down 53.4%. The other high flyer in recent sessions has been AMC Entertainment. It was down 54%. And silver, keeping an eye on that, retreating today. Right now, we have got silver trading lower by 9.4%. The iShares Silver ETF down now by 7.7%. This headline to pass along from the Bloomberg Professional Service. Hormel in talks to buy Kraft Heinz's planters for about $3 $80 billion. That's according to Dow Jones. Hormel shares, they're up now by 4.1%. 10-year down 6/32, 10-year yield right now 1.09%. Gold is down 1.4%, $18.35 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude up 2.3%, $54.78 a barrel. Bottom line here, stocks on track for their biggest rally in 3 months as the trading frenzy that fueled a surge in heavily shorted shares continues to ease. I'm Charlie Pellett. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, got it, Charlie. Really appreciate it. Let's get right to the Business Week agenda. Dave Wilson is in the house. Well, not really, but he is on the Access line in New Jersey. He's our stocks editor at Bloomberg News. All right, Dave, I do feel like it's a tale of two markets, the frenzied trading meme stocks versus the overall market.
Absolutely, and I may not be in the house, but I'm in my house watching it all, and it's just staggering, to see what's going on with these Reddit-driven shares, the way that they're really just falling out of bed. Charlie Pellett mentioned a couple of them, AMC and GameStop. You can go a whole lot further than that. The apparel retailer Express down 36%. You look at some of these mining companies that investors were going for. Hecla Mining off almost 20%.
Does that tell us that the market works? That if we leave it alone, ultimately, at some point, it's going to get back to where it should be, certain names?
There are certainly people drawing that conclusion. It's just the process and, the kind of outsized volatility that results. That's where people get a little uneasy, and understandably so, because you're just not used to seeing these kinds of moves. At one point, just looking at GameStop, and its low of the day, it was down 85% from last Thursday. Its peak last Thursday. The 3 days, 85%. That's just stunning, no matter how you look at it. In terms of the broader market, we're kind of getting toward the end of big tech earnings, as you might put it. With Amazon.com and Google's owner Alphabet out after the close, both those shares, both those companies higher. Amazon up 2.1%. Google, of course, has two classes of shares in the S&P 500. They're both up about 1.7%. So, even ExxonMobil, because, even though they had a loss for the year for the first time in at least 4 decades, they came out and yet again reaffirmed they were going to stick with their dividend. Of course, this company pays more than anybody else in the S&P 500 besides Apple and AT&T in terms of the actual dollar amount. $15 billion a year. So Exxon up 1.8%, even though it had that loss. It was close to $22.5 billion for 2020.
Wow, Dave, I want to get go back to what you mentioned when it comes to earnings after the bell today. We are getting toward the end of big tech earnings, Amazon and Alphabet coming out after the bell. We will, of course, have those for you live as we get them. What are you looking to hear from executives? What's the market looking to hear from executives to sort of get an idea of what management is thinking about 2021?
Well, it's interesting. I was just checking out some charts that we have on the terminal, besides my own. Yes, I do that sort of thing.
You look at charts, Dave?
And there's one that's based on what an analyst over at Bloomberg Intelligence is saying. He's kind of making the case that Amazon may be set up to buy back shares because they've got an increasing amount of cash at their disposal, potentially $100 billion over the next 2 years, according to analyst Robert Schiffman. So that may be something to listen for. As far as Google or Alphabet goes, it's always about, their real focus on the search business and, the challenges that they've had in terms of broadening it out. So that's something that clearly investors are going to be paying attention to as the results come out.
Well, I feel like in a couple of weeks where we've been just so enamored with GameStop and the likes that, you get companies like this that the numbers are just in a whole other league of their own, and you're reminded about fundamentals and what really drives growth. And even though these companies, there might be some issues, nonetheless, you're reminded of, successful companies, big, massive companies.
Absolutely. And we'll get a better sense of where Alphabet is on that score. One thing that we're reporting is that they're going to be providing details about their different business segments that they haven't in the past, notably the cloud business, Google Cloud, and that's been a real area of growth for the company, as it has been for its peers like Amazon with AWS, Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft with Azure and IBM and a whole lot of other companies. So it'll be interesting to see how Google Cloud kind of fits into the broader company and what kind of growth it's showing.
Don't forget, too, I think we've got Chipotle after the close as well, so we'll be looking for those numbers. Always love to see what they are up to. All right, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Dave's going to be back a little bit later on with both his chart and stock of the day. So, Groundhog Day. It's just, again, one of those days where I feel like we're settling back into some of the fundamentals. We've got Uber doing a deal. I'm curious about kind of how Drizzly, the alcohol delivery startup, fits into that, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's we're gonna have Lizette Chapman on the show a little later. She joined us on Quick Take, talking all about this deal, and it's fascinating because what she talked about is how Uber stock has increased so much since it bought Postmates over the summer.
Right.
And this is a 90% stock deal, 10% cash. So it's putting that stock price increase to work.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I am curious, and the stock's not doing too bad either this year, so investors seem to be pretty happy about some of the investments the company is making. This isn't a company that's doing buyback, right? They're taking that money and actually putting it to work in terms of feeling, okay, where do we want this company to go? What's the strategy? Have to say, we had a viewer who, you and I have talked a lot about Bitcoin on air. We've talked about it with different guests. But somebody wrote in, Alexander, and he said, you've got to talk to the CEO and founder of MicroStrategy. And I talked with our Mike McClone. He's like, yep, got to have him on. So we've got him on. And some people call him the Bitcoin Slayer. He's been buying up a lot of the digital currency. So we'll see what he has to say about that market.
That's going to be an exciting one. Plus, we also have economic stimulus on autopilot. How's that going to work out? We've got that story and how it relates to the president's latest COVID relief plan. And Carol, you mentioned a little something about earnings, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Amazon and Apple. So let's not forget. We'll be breaking those numbers down.
Hey, I'm really interested in Amazon's earnings because this company likely had a huge holiday quarter. Right. And the big question I think that a lot of people have is the permanent shift that we're seeing, whether it has to do with us buying groceries online or ordering, in Uber's case, ordering Drizzly, right? Ordering food through Uber. Is that going to stick around post-pandemic? So I'm eager to hear Amazon management speak to that and the idea of people continuing with the habits that they've developed over the pandemic.
Right, how much sticks around. In the meantime, let's do the Bloomberg Business Week Bite of the Day, one number that tells us a lot. Tim, today's number, it's kind of small. It's 4.
SpaceX is planning the first all-civilian orbital space flight later this year with 4 people on board. Jared Isaacman, founder and CEO of Ship for Payments, will be the commander on the 2 to 4 day trip and plans to donate 3 seats to promote St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital.
It's really cool what they're doing. I think he's a pilot as well, so he's got some background, but he's putting up a bunch of money for St. Jude's, and they're tapping into the St. Jude's network also to bring in people for that mission. And an ad for the mission will air during the Super Bowl, so we'll be looking forward to that one. Kind of cool, right?
It's very cool. You wouldn't find me on one of those flights yet.
You would find me. I would totally do it. All right, let's get to World and National News. Check in with Nancy Lyons. Hey, Nance.
Democrats are detailing their argument for convicting Donald Trump of inciting an insurrection. In their legal brief filed today, they say the former president could have taken the honorable path and accepted the election results, but instead they say he, quote, summoned a mob to Washington, extorted them into a frenzy, and aimed them like a loaded cannon down Pennsylvania Avenue, end quote. Trump's legal team denies that the former president incited an insurrection and says the impeachment trial is unconstitutional since he has already left the White House.
Today's orders
President
will
Biden
reverse
continues to
former
roll
President
back
Trump's
Donald Trump's immigration policy by signing more executive orders today. Bloomberg's Amy Mars reports from Washington.
To conduct a broad review of asylum programs, and he'll create a new task force to help reunite children who were separated from their families. In just 2 weeks, President Biden will have signed 9 executive actions just on immigration. Today's signing is set for 5 this afternoon, Wall Street time, and we'll bring it to you live here on Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Television. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
The Biden administration will begin providing COVID-19 vaccines to U.S. pharmacies. Part of its plan to ramp up vaccinations as new and potentially more serious virus strains are starting to appear. White House coronavirus coordinator Jeff Zients said today that The government will initially ship it out about 1 million doses to some 6,500 pharmacies across the country. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
All right, Nancy, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Master along with Tim Stanovic. I do feel like we've all gotten, whether we liked it or not, we took a course on what it takes to get a vaccine through and what it means when it comes to efficacy, right? Like in the past, somebody would have been like, so-and-so's vaccine, it's effective. Okay, cool, give it to me. Like now.
I mean, have you ever known who's made a vaccine that you've taken? Like who's manufactured it?
No.
Yeah, no idea.
It's such a different
Like who makes
world.
the flu shot that you get every year?
Don't know. Just go ahead, put
no
it
idea.
on, throw the Band-Aid on, I'm out of here. It's really kind of wild. And so AstraZeneca's come out and they've got a COVID vaccine showing 82% effectiveness with a 3-month gap between 2 shots. And it's also shown to significantly reduce transmission of the virus, which is really key.
That part is huge. We had the editor-in-chief of the medical journal, The Lancet, on Quick Take earlier.
Great.
And this headline crossed as we were doing the interview. He hadn't seen this news. I told him about the 67% reduction in transmission after the first dose, and he said this was a, quote, milestone. It is a very big deal.
So does every vaccine have some... No, that's
we don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. I mean,
because that feels like it's a new stat, right?
It does, especially when it comes to Astra, it's certainly a new stat. But one area of concern and I think question has been to what extent can people who have received the vaccine and been vaccinated, to what extent can they still transmit the virus? And we're learning more and more about that.
Listen, and I keep thinking about, what is, and we can ask this of our guest, I've kind of got a question of like tipping point between getting vaccines out before the variants start to spread even more to a point where the existing group of vaccines don't mean anything, and then we've got to go through this kind of process in a mini form all over again, which reduces and delays reopening of the economy.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I think the big question still is when are we going to see widespread rollout? And we're seeing news from the Biden administration today, too, that they're going to experiment with different ways to get the shot out to people, including sending to pharmacies, too.
Yeah, which I think is a game changer, ultimately. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Radio.
Hey guys, if you're looking to buy Japanese yen, time to buy Japanese yen because I'm placing an order to buy at 105.083. Order placed, buy at 105.083 Japanese yen. Okay, that's it. So you need to place order 2 and hopefully it will get executed soon. Speak to you later.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks are holding close to session highs. In fact, they are heading for their biggest rally in 3 months as the trading frenzy that fueled a surge in heavily shorted shares continues to ease. Among some of those names, GameStop down now by 53.2%, AMC Entertainment down now by 41%, Silver very much in focus yesterday, tumbling today by 8.9%. S&P's up 64, higher by 1.7%, the Dow up 558, up 1.9%, Nasdaq is up 231, up 1.7%. 10 years down 730 seconds, 10-year yield now 1.10%. Gold is down 1.3%, 18.37 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 2.2%, 54.71 a barrel. After the bell, we'll be hearing from Amazon up 2.2%, as well as Google up now by 1.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, got it, Charlie. Thank you so much. So a lot of headlines out about the virus again, Tim, today. We've got the U.S. may recommend wearing 2 masks to battle more contagious variants of the virus. That's according to Dr. Fauci, Anthony Fauci. You've got more countries in Europe reporting evidence that the spread of the UK variant is increasing, which could lead to prolonged restrictions. But we did talk about some better news yesterday with deaths starting to drop across the U.S.
Yeah, we did. And look, I think what's exciting to see, and maybe exciting isn't really the right term, but we sort of got this slew of good news, right? More development when it comes to a new vaccine and new data about vaccine. But at the same time, everywhere you look in the United States, we are starting to see us get over that latest hump. It's something that I've been eager to talk to Dr. Dave Wessner about. He's a professor of biology at Davidson College and joins us right now on the phone from Davidson, North Carolina. Professor, it's really great to have you on the show. Where are we right now in this pandemic?
Well, thanks for having me. It's nice to be back again.
Yeah,
I think we're in a hopeful position. Yeah, I think there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel now. I don't think the tunnel is necessarily as short as people might hope it would be. But I think with the news, with the various vaccines that are coming out, I think there is hope for us.
Okay, having said that, let's just jump right into the variant and the variants that keep coming out, right? We've got UK, we've got Brazil, we've got South Africa. And I do wonder if there is a tipping point in terms of how many and by a certain date in terms of getting the COVID vaccine out before these variants start to infect too many of the global population. You know, what do we need to kind of know about that and think about that, especially if we're hoping to reopen our economy sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I think the appearance of these variants is not at all a surprise. This is nothing unusual. Viruses mutate a lot. They throw out these variants. The real concern for researchers and clinicians are, do these variants behave differently in some troubling way? You know, are they more easily transmissible? Do they cause worse disease? Are they resistant to immunity, vaccine-induced immunity or natural immunity? So to your question, I think the UK variant B117 is pretty widespread. Yeah, I don't think we're not putting the genie back in the bottle with a lot of these. It appears though that the vaccines that we do have, the Moderna vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, are probably pretty effective against these new variants as well.
All of them? Brazil, South Africa as well?
I mean there's different data on different ones, but generally, yes. I mean, I think researchers from Pfizer reported just on Friday that neutralization of the B117, the UK variant, was pretty much the same as the quote wild type virus with their vaccine. It was slightly reduced, but not in any meaningful way. The South African variant seems to be a little bit more resistant to the vaccine, but not to a degree that it's, we're not going to say the vaccines are ineffective with that variant. I mean, they're less effective, but not necessarily less effective in a really concerning way.
Dave, it was surprising for me to hear you say that you do believe the variant found in the UK is likely widespread here. And the only reason it's surprising to me is because what we saw happen in London about a month ago, in the wider part of the United Kingdom a month ago, doesn't seem to be happening, at least right now, here in the United States. And I'm talking, hospitals overcrowded and more cases?
Excuse me, the cases have started to go down a little bit in most places in the United States. They were going up pretty rapidly until recently. And that may have been a result of the holidays and a spike in cases from family gatherings. One thing that we're not doing as much in the United States as in the UK is this genomic sequencing of viruses. And so with the limited amount of sequencing we are doing, we've seen this variant in various places. I wouldn't be surprised if we did more sequencing. We see a higher prevalence of that variant here.
Right. So I guess the question, Tim and I are trying to get our heads around as we talk to various folks in the medical community and certainly the pharmaceutical industry is, should we, there was, I guess, a lot of talk about it's going to be another tough February, March, in that we were going to get another third wave. I don't even know. I've lost count because of these, because of the variants specifically. And do you anticipate that?
I think it's a very real possibility. I think one of the fears that I have is that people will say, oh, we have vaccines out there. People are starting to get shots. I can sort of let off the gas. I can start relaxing in my personal mitigation efforts, wearing masks, socially distant, avoiding crowds, and so forth. I think if people sort of relax on those strategies, then yes, we could see a pretty big uptick pretty quickly. So I think it's imperative now that people really are conscious about those relatively simple mitigation efforts.
Hey, Dave, very briefly, double masking. We heard Dr. Anthony Fauci say earlier today that the CDC might start to recommend 2 masks because of these variants. What do you make of it?
That's not going to hurt. I think a lot of people have cloth masks on, which do a reasonably well job. If you have a cloth mask on, though, there are gaps between the sides, gaps between the tops that are going to let different particles in and out. Having a second mask on is going to reduce those gaps. It's going to reduce the spread of the virus from you to someone else if you're infected. It's going to reduce your chance of inhaling the virus. That's not going to hurt. If that's what it takes to really tamp things down, I think that's a reasonable approach.
All right. Hang on for a sec. Dave, we're going to do a little bit of news, and then we'll come back and continue the conversation. We're going to get back to Professor Dave Westner, Professor of Biology at Davidson College, joining us from North Carolina. It's just hard. I feel like, Tim, we go from day to day, and we're covering similar headlines, and there's different feelings about the significance of it.
Yeah, there is, and it's hard to sort of come to terms with the fact that we are so used to thousands of people dying every single day.
Never get used to that.
This is Bloomberg.
Okay, guys, we got Japanese yen. So, if you placed an order, well done. Just right here, you bought whatever contract you got, 1 to 10 contracts of Japanese yen. Okay, position opened at 105.083.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Yes, indeed. This is Bloomberg Business Week on this Tuesday, Groundhog Day. And it does often feel like Groundhog Day when it comes to the virus. But you know what? Safe to say we're making progress, Tim.
Yeah, we are making progress. But look, vaccines cannot come soon enough as far as the administration of them goes. We have the vaccines. We're just not getting them into arms as quickly as I would like.
Yeah, well, let's dig into that. We're going to get back to Dr. Dave Wessner over at the Davidson College, and we'll continue with him in just a moment. First up, though, back to the trading day. Hey, Charlie Pellet.
Well, hello there. Groundhog Day it is. I like shots. I'm just saying that, putting that out there right now. We have got the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all pushing higher. Earnings after the bell today will be Amazon up now by 2.1% and Alphabet, parent of Google, up there by 1.7%. Stocks on track for their biggest rally in 3 months as the trading frenzy that fueled a surge in heavily shorted shares continued to ease. Investors also sifting through a batch of corporate earnings. We heard from ExxonMobil this morning. Yes to the dividend, at least through 2025. ExxonMobil up now by 1.7%. Here's where we stand in terms of the equity trade. S&P up 63, up 1.7%. The Dow up 555, up 1.8%. NASDAQ up 228, up by 1.7%. 10-year down 730 seconds, 10-year yield 1.10%. We've got gold down 1.2%. 1837 the ounce. West Texas intermediate crude up 2%, 54.64 a barrel. Lots of vaccine news today. Briefly, Pfizer says it expects about $15 billion in revenue this year from the COVID-19 vaccine it developed with BioNTech. Pfizer down 2.2% today. BioNTech lower now by 1.2%. AstraZeneca's COVID vaccine showed 82.4% effectiveness with a 3-month gap between 2 shots. The maximum dosing interval approved in the UK, according to a new study. AstraZeneca, the ADR, is down now by 0.2%. More Americans have received at least 1 dose of a COVID-19 vaccine that have tested positive for the virus, an early but hopeful milestone in the race to end the pandemic. Dr. Amish Adalja, senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, and he was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
It's definitely a sustained trend that we're seeing, that this wasn't a fluke of reporting, which is initially what many of us were worried about. But the thing is that it's tenuous because we've got these variants, like the South African and Brazilian specifically, which are more contagious and may pose problems for not only vaccine immunity, but natural immunity. And the goal, the vaccine works well against those. They will be in terms of preventing serious disease, preventing hospitalization, preventing death, but it doesn't seem to be as effective at preventing infection. So we've got to stay ahead of that, or you will see cases rise.
And again, some of the other vaccine names right now, Moderna is down 0.4%. Johnson & Johnson, little change, down less than 0.1%. Recapping, stocks higher, S&P up 65, up 1.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you, Charlie Pellet. Let's get back to Dr. Dave Wessner. Carol and I were talking all about vaccine delivery, vaccine administration. Dave Wessner is a professor of biology at Davidson College, and he joins us on the phone from North Carolina. Professor Wessner, I'm curious about your thoughts when it comes to the news that we learned today from our Bloomberg colleagues that President Joe Biden's administration is going to pilot a program to provide coronavirus vaccines directly to pharmacies in an attempt to ratchet up the pace of inoculations in the U.S. It's going to be a small pilot to begin with, but is this the right way to get to herd immunity?
Yeah, I think it's worth trying. Yeah, I think we've seen already that distribution, getting shots in the arm, is a logistical challenge. So I think it's certainly worth exploring if Walgreens, CVS, other pharmaceutical pharmacies like that can help in that process.
I'm wondering if we think about the administration here of vaccines, actually giving them. Where are you seeing the bottleneck? Where is the bottleneck happening? Because we have to understand, I mean, this is, as we've learned, and Carol mentioned this, like we never thought we'd become such a sort of like armchair experts, right? In thinking about vaccines and actually giving vaccines. But we have the production of them, and of course, before that, the approval. And we also have to make sure that there are enough supplies, right? Syringes, needles, people to make sure that, you're being observed for 15 minutes, people who are trained to give the shots. Where do you see the bottleneck?
Yeah, I think what I've seen, it's distribution. It's getting the vaccine doses to the vaccination sites, the places that are actually administering them. I mean, that seems to be, things I've heard, places around here that have gotten vaccines are using them. I mean, they're not wasting the vaccine doses themselves. They're getting them in arms. It's just waiting for more vaccines to get there. And talk about the vaccines a little bit, just back a moment too, getting back to the variants. Yeah. A few months ago, people were saying if we get a vaccine that's 70% effective, that's really good. We got 2 that are 95% effective, which is amazing. So even if these variants even if vaccines are not quite as effective against these variants, they're still pretty good vaccines. I think we shouldn't lose sight of that when we're talking about these variants.
Well, and it was, there was an interesting column. It was a Bloomberg opinion piece by our Andreas Kluth, and it said, "Stop whining about vaccines. It's only February." And the point being that, listen, folks, it's pretty remarkable that we have a vaccine, and it's what we were working for. And shame on whoever or whatever in terms of not being ready in terms of the rollout. But, we've never had to do this, to be quite honest, or it's been a long time. And so when you hear something like that, do you agree that we need to just kind of understand what we've done so far, and it is going to just take a while to get all these vaccines into the arms of individuals, especially when you're talking about 2 doses?
I mean, absolutely. If you look at the timeline, the first report came out in December of 2019 of this new virus in Wuhan. So in 11 months' time, 12 months' time, we have vaccines. We have the virus identified, sequenced. We have vaccines on market. That's really remarkable. So yes, I think the rollout has been a bumpy road so far. It can never be done fast enough, obviously. But yes, I think we're in really good place considering where we were just a year ago.
And
Go ahead.
No, I bet we're going to go to the same place.
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
So Dave, what's your best guess in terms of there's enough shots in people's arms that we can actually start to kind of reopen and get back to a more normal way of life? Is it end of spring? Is it summer? How do you see it? Just quickly, and got 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think end of summer. I mean, I think next fall, we start looking at Labor Day this coming year. I think things will look a lot different than they do now.
All right. Fingers crossed, man.
Seriously.
Dave, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Dr. Dave Wessner, professor of biology over at Davidson College, on the phone from Davidson, North Carolina. I mean, listen, it's been an unbelievable undertaking, right, Tim? And we have come a long way. I think it just feels like, well, wait a minute. We knew we were going to have to get these into the arms of individuals.
We were, and I think January was a really hard month for a lot of people. We had a tremendous loss of life in the United States, more than 95,000 people. And I think just the fact that it's winter and we've been doing this for so long, we are so ready to see the sun again.
Yeah.
And I think it's starting to feel very long for people.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get back to world and national news. Over to Nancy Lyons in our 99.1 newsroom in the nation's capital. Hey, Nance.
Hey, Carol. The government is expanding the distribution of vaccines and will start sending kits to pharmacies later this month.
This pharmacy program will expand access in neighborhoods across the country so you can make an appointment and get your shot conveniently and quickly.
White House Coronavirus Response Coordinator Jeff Zients said the first phase will be limited to 6,500 pharmacies because of limited vaccine supplies. The initiative begins February 11th and will include outlets like CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, Rite Aid, and Costco, as well as supermarket pharmacies. Well, the Senate has approved Pete Buttigieg to be Transportation Secretary, which makes him the first openly gay person confirmed to a cabinet post. Buttigieg is tasked with advancing President Biden's agenda of rebuilding the nation's infrastructure. The FBI has confirmed 2 agents were killed, 3 were wounded in South Florida while serving a federal search warrant in a case involving violent crimes against children. Authorities say the suspect is also dead. Details of the specific case have not been shared. Punxsutawney Phil came through on his Groundhog Day duties this morning, although the event was virtual this year. Tom Dunkel is vice president of the Punxsutawney Groundhog Club. He announced Phil's findings.
Now, when I turn to see, there's a perfect shadow cast of me. 6 more weeks of winter there will be.
In its 135-year history, Phil has predicted winter 106 times, spring just 20 times. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Nance, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Tim Stenovic. And we're going to kind of go a couple different places because there's a really great write-up on the Bloomberg. It's called The Climate Billionaires, Elon Musk on the top, the rest are made in China. And it's basically looking at individuals who are involved in climate change businesses, if you will, or green businesses, making an impact on our climate, and who's doing really well at it, and where are the billionaires when it comes to that list. So
and yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of our listeners, number one is not going to be surprising, but it's the ones that come after Mr. Elon Musk, who has a net worth of close to $200 billion and a green net worth. And this is the cool part. They separated into the green net worth and the net worth. The green net worth of $180 billion.
Which is pretty significant.
Yeah.
Right? But I think what's also interesting in this story, Tim, is that we think, we're doing all the green work, but China is made a lot of inroads when it comes to solar and some other areas. So we'll put that out on Twitter, and you can kind of go through the list of our green billionaires. Having said that, at the same time, there's a story that's popped up, your radar, my radar. It has to do, while we're talking about money and individuals, has to do with Ivanka and Jared.
That's right. Ivanka and Jared's White House run ended with a sharp income drop. So the couple reported as much as $120 million in income for 2020. That was their final financial disclosure as White House advisors. Sounds like a lot of money. I think it's a lot of money, but it's a more than 20% drop from what they reported a year ago.
Yeah, so that's down from 156 million, right? So listen, when we do these kinds of stories, folks, forgive us, don't judge us. It's all perspective.
Yes, exactly.
And that they have seen money go down in terms, it's still a lot of money. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yes, it is. I was being a little sarcastic when I said I think it's a lot of money.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Definitely a lot of money.
Well, and it's interesting. We keep talking about the Trump brand, right? And just the family brand, and we'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah, I mean, after the pandemic, it's going to be interesting to see what the Trump brand will do, and then, of course, how it weathers the pandemic as well. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Business Week continues.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Investors gobbling up Hormel and Kraft shares. Shares of Kraft Heinz and Hormel Foods jumping on a report from the Wall Street Journal that the companies are in talks over the sale of the Planters snack business. Hormel shares up now by 4.76%. Kraft up now by 0.6%. U.S. stocks on track for the biggest rally in 3 months as the trading frenzy that fueled a surge in heavily shorted shares crumbled. Investors also sifting through a batch of corporate earnings ahead of results after the bell from Amazon and Alphabet. Amazon right now up 2.2%. Alphabet, parent of Google, up now by 2%. S&P up 68, higher by 1.8%. The Dow up 582, up 1.9%. NASDAQ up 247, up 1.9%. We've got the NASDAQ 100 index also up now by just about 1.9%. S&P, by the way, at session highs. 10-year down 7/32, 10-year yield 1.10%. Gold down 1.3%, 18.37 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 2.3%, 54.76 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, February is Black History Month, and throughout the month, Bloomberg will be celebrating pivotal moments in U.S. Black history. Let's get more on that from Bloomberg's Renita Young.
On this day in Black history in 2009, Eric Holder became the first Black Attorney General of the United States of America. He was confirmed as the 82nd Attorney General of the nation. Then President Barack Obama nominated Holder months before, and he served more than 6 years as Obama's Attorney General. This made him the third longest serving Attorney General in U.S. history. Today, Holder advises clients on complex investigations and litigation matters at international law firm Covington and Burling. That's Today in Black History. I'm Renita Young, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, now we want to get to a story that's going to be featured in the upcoming issue of Bloomberg Business Week magazine. We know actions have consequences. We say that a lot, Tim. It applies to a story by Bloomberg News energy reporter Robert Tuttle, who writes about it and writes specifically that President Biden's recent Keystone XL cutoff has really hurt and shocked a tiny town up in Canada. Let's get more. Robert joins us on the phone from Calgary, along with Bloomberg Business Week editor Joel Weber on the Access line in Brooklyn. And I feel like, Joel, the Keystone Pipeline man, on again, off again, on again, off again.
Yeah, that's right. And this story is one of those ones that I do think kind of just speaks to sort of the West. I think of it in terms of American West a lot, but certainly applies to Canada. There's been, just hundreds of towns through the history of, we'll talk a little bit about that, really kind of tethered its fortune to the Keystone Pipeline. And then obviously when President Biden came out and sort of changed policy there, it has repercussions down that pipeline. So Robert, talk to us about the town that you decided to set all of this in.
Yeah, so I one morning got up real early and drove east out of Calgary about 3 hours. It's the town is Oyen. It's close to the Saskatchewan borders. It's a rural, very rural. It's a farming town. There's some ranches around there. But this town was kind of ground zero for the Keystone XL construction work, which had kicked off last year, and that had been caused the town's population to just about double for a period there, and especially during the summer and the fall, as workers were coming in to build the pipeline. They set up some camps. Businesses were raking in a lot of money, up to $4 million Canadian dollars a month extra. That's what the mayor told me. And that kind of just came to a halt when the project was canceled by Joe Biden on his first day in office.
How quickly has the town sort of reeled from that decision? What was the before and what does the after start to look like?
Well, I mean, when I got there, it was a few days after, and things were still kind of up in the air a little bit. It didn't seem like that they had yet adjusted, but workers were leaving. Before that, you had about 1,000 extra people. This is a town of just under 1,000 people. You had about 1,000 extra people living there and doing business there, workers. After that, it was clear some people were starting to leave, but things were still kind of up in the air. There was a lot of construction along the route, which passed through the area. There was a lot of pipe left in some storage yards along those areas. And when I was there, you didn't see a lot of workers in these sites. But there were still workers there. There's still some work to do in terms of just cleaning up what was left.
Robert, sorry to jump in. I do wonder. Carol made the reference to this on again, off again, comment with the Keystone XL. I do wonder if this cancellation is final. I mean, is this the final blow?
Yeah, I mean, this has been around for 12 years, more than 12 years. The project was canceled once before by President Obama. It was brought back by President Trump. Now, this looks a lot more final simply because there's sort of a strong turn against the oil sands. So the oil sands themselves are not expand. The oil sands producers are not expanding it very much anymore. And it doesn't look like that will happen for a while still. At the same time, so there isn't as much need for this pipeline. There's also a couple other pipelines that are being built and that are going to be enough for the oil sands industry, at least into this decade. So it doesn't seem like there's as much of a need for it. I think the industry did want to get this pipeline built. There are people I've spoken to, including a former executive of TC Energy, who said he thinks it could still come back to life in another administration. But there is a turn against this at the moment. There does seem to be a change.
And how has that played out just in Canadian politics?
Yeah, so that was really interesting. Here in Alberta, the government itself wanted to get this project going, and the company was holding back to see what would happen, I think, at the end of the election. That's what the premier here said for Jason Kenney. So they actually invested 1.5 billion Canadian taxpayer dollars, Alberta taxpayer dollars, in the project. That was just to get a jumpstart construction. That started last spring. At the time, the premier said that he wanted to create facts on the ground that would make it hard for any administration to come in to cancel this project. The company also signed a bunch of labor agreements with unions in the United States.
Right.
They also agreed to sell a stake to some indigenous communities along the route, which many indigenous communities have spearheaded opposition.
Right.
So they did everything possible, I think, to sell this to a future Biden administration.
Wow.
That wasn't enough.
And certainly.
Sorry.
No. We've got to unfortunately wrap it up, but we'll put it out on Twitter, Robert, because it's a great story. And as you include in it, there's the other argument that says if we don't do it this way, we're going to have to do it on rail cars, which can be have their own economic impact and climate impact and be dangerous. So there's a lot of moving sides to this story. Thank you so much, Robert Tuttle. Check it out. And, of course, our thanks to Joel Weber. For those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco and watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week with Tim and myself, we're going to continue. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business, that's coming up next. This is Bloomberg.
I'm placing an order to buy euro 120, 20.2. 120, 20.2. Just right here.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this Tuesday, February 2nd, Groundhog Day, and lots of development.
Position opened 120.202, yeah? Okay.
According to sources. Italy talks to form a new Conte government have failed. Shares of Kraft Heinz and Hormel Foods both higher after a Wall Street Journal report saying the companies are in talks on the sale of the Planters snack business. Hormel shares, they are trading higher right now. We've got Hormel up by 4.51%, and shares of Kraft Heinz up now by 0.5%. It is an up day across the board with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing. Day trading frenzy is collapsing. Among some of those names, GameStop down now by 56%. AMC Entertainment lower now by just about 4.3%. Here's where we stand in terms of the equity markets. S&P up 67 points, best level of the day right now, up 1.8%. The Dow's up 589, up by 2%. NASDAQ up 243, that is a gain of 1.8%. 10-year down 730 seconds, 10-year yield right now 1.10%. Under an hour away from the latest earnings out of Amazon and Alphabet, parent of Google. Broadly speaking, what should we expect? Chris Grisanti is the CEO of Grisanti Capital Management.
We're expecting decent earnings there, and I think it will be more of the same strong growth through the pandemic. Great companies to own when times are tough, but also great companies to own as the economy recovers. So, you know, the spotlight is on GameStop, but the action, the sizzles on GameStop, the stake is Amazon and Google and Facebook, etc.
And Amazon shares right now, they are up 2.1%. Alphabet shares up 1.8%. He mentioned Facebook up 2.1%. GameStop worth repeating, down 56% right now. AMC down 41. Gold down 1.3%. 10-year yield 1.10%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenovic on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, yes, indeed. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Messer along with Tim Stenovic. And I keep hearing Mr. Planters or Plant, and I'm thinking, right, Mr. Peanut.
Yeah.
That's what I can think of every time I hear that story. What?
I'm just thinking, I'm going to get on a tangent here, but remember the Super Bowl ad last year?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
I think so.
Okay, good.
It's just like, right? That's all I keep thinking about.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Hey, but shareholders sound pretty happy.
I know, right? It's like we're seeing companies do deals and kind of, lean more into certain, business lines and strategies. And speaking of that, we saw that certainly play out today. One of our top business stories, M&A stories, Uber, doing another deal, buying up the alcohol delivery startup. It's Drizzly. They spent $1.1 billion. You mentioned earlier it was a stock deal. So they're taking advantage of the run-up that they've seen in shares. So what does it mean? What does it mean for the bottom line, the overall strategy? Let's bring in Bloomberg News venture capital reporter Lizette Chapman. Tim, you actually caught up with her earlier on Quick Take, and she's back with us on the phone in San Francisco. Lizette, good to have you.
I think we're still waiting to get Lizette right now.
Okay.
In the meantime.
I'm here.
Oh, Lizette is
same.
here. Fantastic.
I knew you were there.
I've been waiting to talk about this big boozy acquisition from Uber.
So let's talk about it. Did you say doozy? Did you say a doozy of an acquisition?
Well, I said boozy.
Oh, boozy.
But it's a doozy too. At $1.1 billion, this is not chump change. It's the first acquisition Uber's done since Postmates for $2.6 billion last year, and it really shores up what Uber's been driving at for the past year, which is that, hey guys, we're going to offload all these other bets in flying cars and in driving technologies, and we're just going to focus on two things that can help us be profitable. Remember, they're not yet, which are delivery and rides. And people really like their booze, and this allows them to really increase all the different markets they serve through a bunch of partnerships and the software that deals with all those nasty, back office issues like what counties are dry counties and, across the nation, which it gets kind of complicated once you dig in.
Well, that was, we talked about this earlier on Quick Take, Lizette, because I asked you the question, why doesn't Uber just develop it themselves? It turns out it's actually pretty difficult to, make sure you're following all the rules when you're delivering booze, right?
Yeah, it is. It's complex, and this is a Boston-based startup. They've been doing this for 8 years, and they really focused on meeting the legal requirements first, which is, different than the way Uber and some other companies have approached a new category. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out and whether the big surge in drinking continues after the pandemic.
Well, that's that's the huge question. We've had a fair amount of pitches, and we've had guests on where are tapping into this, Lizette, this whole idea of we've been home, people have been drinking more, and so we've definitely seen that happen. But I do wonder, when we get on the other side, aren't we going to be maybe hopefully in a restaurant
Carol,
drinking more?
Yeah, but after you're drinking in a restaurant, you use the Uber app to call an Uber to get you home safely, right?
Oh, is that the connection? We're just going to tie it all together?
I don't know. Maybe. That's definitely what Uber is hoping. And, you look at all of these delivery companies. You look at DoorDash. You look at Instacart. Both of those companies on the precipice of IPOs. They've seen huge valuation surges in their recent fundings. And they've raised a ton from venture capital and other, financiers who are betting on the fact that this convenience and this almost like a necessity now will become a habit, right?
Yeah.
This thing of everyone being shut in. Well, now it's just convenient. It becomes a habit. And Uber has long wanted to be your everything, your operating system for your life, I think is the way that it was described over a year ago, pre-pandemic. And they were going to link everything all together. But, again, the focus is really squarely on turning a profit for this company. They are going to be reporting their earnings, a little bit later this month. And, the margins on alcohol, you can't beat those. So this has been, something that a number of their competitors also took a look at. We just updated our story. We got some new reporting in that, tips to the fact that DoorDash and also GoPuff, took a look at this company. They wound up not, reaching a deal. And interestingly enough, there's a piece of Drizzly, which is cannabis delivery. It's a standalone piece called Lantern that they operate, and it's not coming with the deal. Uber has not commented on why, wouldn't elaborate on that. We're still trying to get some details. We'll update you when we do. But that's where it stands. Yes on booze, no on no on pot.
I mean, if you think restrictions around delivering alcohol are challenging, I can't imagine what they are around, a nationwide delivery program for cannabis in states where it is legal. I do wonder about investors in Drizzly. You have a note in your story that the last valuation was $73 million for the company back in 2017.
Correct.
Over
That
$1
was
billion
according to
purchase.
PitchBook.
Wow.
Yeah, that was according to PitchBook, which is a research firm, and they listed that as the last valuation, which, if they, did not adjust it after that. And again, this has been a company that's been pretty quiet. It started with a burst of a bunch of similar companies. I think there was there was more than a half dozen in this area. There was Minibar and Saucy and all of these other ones, and they all emerged with this idea of on-demand booze delivery, and they all reached a certain amount, and then some of them just you didn't really hear from anymore. And that happens in startup land because VCs, really only talk about, and companies really only talk about when they're expanding and when they're growing. And then they just kind of quietly die away. They don't really go out and say, hey, we're really not doing well right now and we're going to close shop. So, this was the leading one. It was the largest one. It had raised all their competitors. So it's not a huge surprise that this was the one that was left standing.
Lizette, Uber, just quickly, still unprofitable, correct?
Yep. You got that right.
I was just looking at revenues. We're talking about, $11 billion in revenues maybe for this year or fiscal year, and it's a $105 billion market cap company. Just got 20 seconds here. Hard to get your head around that.
Right. It is not profitable. It's never been profitable.
Yeah.
But CEO Dara Khosrowshahi has pledged and then reiterated that pledge multiple times as recently as a month ago, maybe even less, saying we will hit a profit this year regardless of what happens with COVID. That's a hell of a bar to cross considering their rides have been decimated, but it's one that he has said that they're going to commit to, and hopefully delivery can help them.
All right. So glad we got to check in with you. Bloomberg News venture capital reporter Lizette Chapman. Check her out on Twitter. All right, back to World and National News and Nancy Lyons. Hey, Nance.
Hey, Carol. Americans could soon be getting their COVID vaccine from their local pharmacy. That's the news from the White House Coronavirus Task Force. Jeff Zients is the task force COVID coordinator.
Starting on February 11th, the federal government will deliver vaccines directly to select pharmacies across the country. This will provide more sites for people to get vaccinated in their communities, and it's an important component to delivering vaccines equitably.
The initial rollout will be roughly 6,500 pharmacies, growing to eventually 40,000. UK researchers now say the COVID variant first detected there appears to be undergoing some worrying new genetic changes. It may be starting to look more like the variants first found in South Africa and Brazil, meaning vaccines may not be as effective. Infectious disease expert Dr. Helmut Albrecht says it's important to be vaccinated to stop these mutations from spreading.
It's becoming clear that the virus can learn new tricks every day. They're spreading as fast as a plane can fly.
The nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, says the CDC may recommend wearing 2 masks, one over the other, to stop the spread of these coronavirus variants. Amazon is paying nearly $62 million to settle charges it took tips from its delivery drivers. The Federal Trade Commission says for more than 2 years, Amazon did not pass on tips to drivers, even though it promised shoppers and drivers it would do that. The FTC says Amazon did not stop taking the money until 2019. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts.
Can I just say, Tim, I'm not even going to tell people what you mouthed, but that story just kills me. Come on.
I know.
These drivers are, I talk to them all the time. I love to know about the business and what they've got their hands in. We're talking about...
And think about what they're doing, right? They're delivering stuff, whether it's groceries or packages, because you don't want to be out there at the grocery store.
Right.
You don't want to be out there at the retailer. Yes, it's more convenient, but I think what we've seen during the pandemic, the rise in online grocery shopping, the rise in e-commerce, it's happening because, people want to use these services rather than being out there in person. So tip the person who is literally risking their life to bring you these things.
That's why I try to do it in cash. I really do. And I got to say, these guys are up early in the mornings, on the weekends. They're late at night. Man, come on. Be better, world. Be better, Amazon. I'm going to just say it. This story, definitely among the most read on the Bloomberg terminal. And this has to do with AOC Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez detailing the moment she feared for her life during the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. She disclosed that she's a survivor of past sexual assault. And so she talked about this and why she was, safe to say, traumatized again in terms of what happened at the Capitol.
Yeah, I think, this is a big story for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is because of what she talked about, revealing her past sexual assault and talking about the trauma, but also because of the way that AOC has really changed the way that politicians communicate with their constituents. And, she does these Instagram lives that get so many views while they're happening and also afterward. I mean, you log into Twitter this morning and she's trending in several different places because of what she talked about. And I think it really raises the question about not only what happened on January 6th, but also the way that, members of Congress are communicating with their constituents and beyond their constituencies.
Well, especially coming off a president who largely communicated through the Twitter platform and social media, how it's being used certainly politically as well as by our politicians. So more to come, I'm guessing, on this. This is Bloomberg.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters.